My name is Hiroki Matsuuchi, and you are listening to or watching Bridges, a weekly showcase of a single content creator in Japan and their content. This is episode number 24, and today we are featuring This American Life. Oh, no wait, I mean This Japanese Life, which is a website run by a New England expat named Eryk, that's E-R-Y-K. Hailing from the same state where I attended university, Maine, Eryk has been running his blog since June of 2010 and has been really good about keeping a steady flow of great content coming at us since then. Being a former newspaper editor, what struck me first about Eryk's site is the fact that he can definitely write. Even such tired topics as racism in Japan or the perilous Mount Fuji climb all seemed really fresh, probably, I would say mainly because of his very engaging writing style. So, of course, I'd like to take a quick tour of his website and highlight just a few of his blog posts, a few of his many blog posts. I'll do my best to read as smoothly as possible. So I will put 10 minutes on the timer, and we will see how much we can see. So, of course, this is the main page. It's this very interesting illustration up top. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, I believe there's a bit of an explanation. Apparently, the header image is part of a larger work by a Japanese illustrator and photographer. And yeah, so please check it out. It's a very, very bizarre header, but kind of cool. So why don't we start at the About Me section. It's always a good place to start, and learn a little bit more about Eryk. So Eryk is a former newspaper editor from Maine, now teaching English in Japan with the JET program. He's one of those Jets, huh? He has written for a California salvage yard consortium, and on the topics of prescription drugs and metal bands, and tanks and bubblegum for McSweeney's. He's a frequent photo contributor to Flannel magazine and posts images to the Birdwatchers Report. In a previous life as a visual artist, his work was featured in the New York Times and mentioned in Artforum, Mute magazine, and the Dutch press, which dubbed him the Harry Potter of the digital vanguard. But apparently he is mostly done with this stuff. Salsabomb.com includes any creative output not covered here. Yes, I mean, of course, this guy does have a background in writing, which makes I'd say it's pretty obvious when you read some of his posts. So speaking of which, why don't we jump into some of his more recent posts? How about his most recent one, which is on bowling in Japan? This is the first time I've read, I think, a post out of Japan all about bowling. Bowling. If you don't play a sport, you've run out of possible conversations with about 90% of Japanese men. So I started lying. I'm a bowler. At first, it was a genius move. I would never be asked to talk about the careers of obscure Japanese baseball players. I wouldn't have to explain the rules of American football. I'd just say I bowled. Talk to one person in an office as a new foreigner and watch what happens. My Japanese persona was quickly settled. I was a very passionate bowler. Very interesting. This is something that happens in Japan as you reduce your personality to simple expectations and simpler English. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's not that you set out to lie or misrepresent yourself, but you have to talk about something cross-cultural that means food, sports, or Michael Jackson, so you latch onto whatever you can, and then you watch it escalate beyond your control. Strikes. I had no recollection of my average bowling score. Very passionate bowlers ought to know this stuff, so I made one up. Since the highest possible score was 360. 360? I thought it was 300. I reasoned I should place the number just above mediocre. 210, I'd say. The highest possible score is 300. My highest score was 120. There we go. When the number impressed people, I realized this was moving from polite white lies to boasting about bullshit territory. So I felt like a college freshman being really awkward about how popular he was in high school. Yeah, but it's a different scoring system, I tell them, based on 360 points. Yeah, so of course the post goes on, and it's quite interesting. And there is actually there's a theme, there's a thesis to this article. Again, unlike many other amateur bloggers, this guy actually knows what he's doing when he writes. And again, it was a very interesting post. This is actually one of my favorites from his site. Another one of my favorites, and one that I read recently, and apparently is his most popular post, is all about racism. This is a recent post posted on July 27th of course, this year, and is titled, Is Japan a Racist Monoculture? On Anders Breivik's Japan. So as I was leaving the train station, I heard the Japanese national anthem. People were waving flags. Some guy was shouting about gaikokujin, which is foreigners, through a loudspeaker. I stopped and stared until a young flag-waving woman raised her bullhorn, looked directly at us and shouted, "Get out of Japan!" Her English was really good. The rise of my noticing Japanese fascists. I had seen them camped out with flags and loudspeakers in front of banks and train stations, spitting rapid-fire Japanese through the feedback of cheap bullhorns. Gaikokujin this, gaikokujin that. I didn't think much about these Japanese fascists until this happened. A bus carrying Chinese tourists in the western Japanese city of Fukuoka, which is actually, it's quite an international city, I would say, was surrounded on Wednesday by more than 10 cars carrying Japanese right-wingers, who then banged windows and kicked the sides of the buses while screaming abuse. Police arrived at the scene and the bus left safely. Actually, I do remember this. I think this was as a result of the Senkaku Island dispute between Japan and China. Even then, the attack seemed politically motivated by land dispute rather than by seldom hatred. The attack was disturbing, but I didn't feel targeted. I had spent too many years internalizing my majority status to realize that I was suddenly a minority. But recent news from Europe has me feeling a little uneasy. This post is actually very interesting, so I think it's worth reading just a little bit more. If you watched the news, you heard about Anders Breivik and aka Anders Breivik, the Norwegian far-right-wing anti-multiculturalist whose idea of a utopian culture is detonating car bombs and methodically slaughtering camping schoolchildren. The news was a stomach-churning blend of Columbine and Christian jihad dressed up as a martyr's ideology. I don't have a problem with religion, but I have an enormous problem with dickheads. Very well said. Breivik was a special breed of dickhead, using terminology you'd never hear in America. As an anti-multiculturalist or a racial monoculturalist, Breivik was an admirer of what he called Japan's nationalistic and racial purity. Here's an excerpt from his manifesto. You can read more of his incorrect ideas about Japan at Japan Probe. So I just really quickly want to read this one last excerpt before I move on to a different post. The most functional countries in the world, this is a quote from Breivik's manifesto, the most functional countries in the world are Japan and South Korea. Well, they believe in cultural monoculturalism mixed with a free market democracy. We believe in cultural monoculturalism and, to a large degree, ethnocentrism, because we know that it is the only proven way of preserving social cohesion levels required to facilitate a welfare state. We believe that the fundamental requirement for a democracy and a welfare state is social cohesion and a non-reformable cultural conservative framework. And as history shows, you cannot have social cohesion in a multicultural society. The U.S. illustrates this quite well. So again, the article goes on. This is a really, really excellent read. And as I said before, one of my favorite posts. And like all of his other posts, there is a thesis and there's a point to it, but I won't give it away. Again, you guys definitely have to check out his site, thisjapaneselife.org, and read it for yourself. But we have just a few more minutes, so I want to jump over to maybe a different section of his blog. So up along the top, he has a section dedicated all to movies, entirely to movies, and one dedicated to video. So let's see. Why don't we check out the first one? This one is called On Kappa. Now, I have to warn you guys, this is territory that I've never tread in before. Kappa. It takes time for new places to seep into my dreams. When I've left a place, my dreams take me back instead of forward. Places to go first. The familiar coffee shops, restaurants, and bookstores stop serving as backdrops. People from the past populate new places, meet new people, and occasionally trade bodies or faces. Dreams about places in Japan have taken about 8 months to catch up. First was the shrine near my house, dreamlike even in life, and never the setting of anything in either world. And this is where I met my first kappa. Kappa. I've never dreamed of the office where I spend 8 hours a day. Instead, I've had dreams with a fully formed mythical creature from Japanese folktales I've never read. This is a very interesting guy. Kappa blend turtles and ducks. They have shelled heads and bodies and wide beaks like a platypus. The head shell is curved to carry water, which lets them move around on land. If the kappa is jostled and the water splashes out, the kappa freezes until someone helps it out, which few people do because kappa are not safe to be around. They have malevolent schemes. They're accused of eating babies, molesting women, and tricking people into their own deaths. Mostly, though, they want to eat any kind of human because as humans we have something called a spirit ball in our rectum. This is something I did not know. Yes, for kappa survivors, their rectum did indeed nearly kill them. Anyway, so I'm going to have to leave this for now because we're getting pretty close to the 10-minute mark. But he has some fascinating posts on a very wide variety of different topics. I would highly recommend checking out his site. Yeah, so definitely, guys, please hop online and check out This Japanese Life. And say hi to this very interesting, and I'm sure very friendly, Japan-based content creator. Yeah, you can even tell him I sent you. And just out of curiosity, do any of you out there bowl by any chance? I do. Anyway, thank you all again for listening to or watching episode 24 of Bridges. If you'd like, please get in touch with us over at bridges@wanwan.fm with any comments, questions, or suggestions for future content creators to be featured on the show. And once again, my name is Hiroki Matsuuchi, and this is Bridges. And thank you guys for watching. See you next week. Bye.